Let me tell you a story about resilience. About how a single word, no, can shatter your confidence but also light a fire that changes everything. Claire Daniels wasn't just chasing a dream, she was chasing her purpose. Her goal was to create a sustainable fashion boutique, a place where style met ethics, where people could shop without guilt. She wasn't asking for much, just the resources to get started. But when she took her carefully crafted plan to the bank, expecting support, she walked out with rejection instead. That single moment could have ended her journey, but it didn't. Instead, Claire turned that rejection into the first step toward building a business empire. The morning of the bank meeting began with a nervous excitement Claire couldn't quite shake. She woke up long before her alarm went off, her mind racing with every detail of her presentation. On the kitchen table sat her business plan, neatly tucked into a sleek black folder. Every page had been carefully prepared, charts and graphs in perfect alignment, her projections based on endless nights of research. It wasn't just a plan, it was her dream on paper. She dressed carefully, choosing her favorite black blazer and a crisp white blouse. As she adjusted her collar in the mirror, she practiced her pitch again. Sustainable fashion isn't just a trend, it's the future, she said firmly, meeting her own gaze. Her voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her nerves as they trembled slightly. At the bank, the sterile environment did little to soothe her anxiety. The polished floors reflected the fluorescent lights overhead, and the faint hum of a copier filled the silence. Clara clutched her folder tightly, her knuckles white as she waited for her name to be called. When it was her turn, she took a deep breath and followed the loan officer into his office. He was a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a desk cluttered with papers. His tie was slightly crooked, as if he had tied it in a rush. "Ms. Daniels," he said, motioning for her to sit. Clara felt her heart pound in her chest, but she smiled politely and began. She explained her vision for the boutique, how it wasn't just about selling clothes but about creating a movement for sustainable fashion. She spoke about the growing demand for eco-friendly products, her plans to source sustainable fabrics, and her strategy for marketing. But as she spoke, the man's expression didn't change. He tapped his pen against the desk and occasionally glanced at the clock on the wall. When she finished, there was a long pause. "I'm sorry, Ms. Daniels," he said finally, his tone polite but detached, "but we can't approve this loan." The words hit Clara like a slap. Her chest tightened as she struggled to process what he had said. "But, I've done the research," she said, her voice faltering. "I've outlined everything." "I understand," he interrupted. "But the market is unproven, and this is a risky investment." Risky. That word echoed in Clara's mind as she nodded stiffly, thanked him for his time, and walked out of the office. Outside, the world carried on as if nothing had happened. Cars honked, people rushed past, and the sun shone brightly. But for Clara, everything felt muted. She sat on a bench near the bank, her folder still clutched in her lap, and let the tears fall. For the first time in months, she felt like her dream was slipping away. Rejection has a way of creeping into your thoughts and planting seeds of doubt. For days after the meeting, Clara was a shadow of herself. She avoided her desk, unable to look at the business plan that now felt like a cruel joke. She replayed the loan officer's words over and over. Risky. Unproven. Not feasible. The phrases clung to her like a bad memory, and the once bright sketches of her designs began to feel more like reminders of her failure. But Clara wasn't the type to give up for long. On the third morning, she woke up with a different kind of energy. It wasn't the same hopeful excitement she had felt before the bank meeting, it was quieter, steadier, and tinged with defiance. "If they won't believe in me," she said aloud, "I'll find someone who does." That day, she opened her laptop and began searching for an alternative funding sources. The hours stretched into the night as she scrolled through endless pages of resources. She read articles about crowdfunding, scoured forums for advice, and clicked through government websites. It was overwhelming, like trying to navigate a maze with no clear path. But just as she was about to give up, something caught her eye. Grant program for women entrepreneurs. Apply now. Her heart raced as she clicked the link. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough to get started, enough to take the first step. The application process was grueling. It required essays, references, and detailed budgets. Clara threw herself into it, working late into the night and pouring every ounce of energy into perfecting her submission. She wrote about her vision for sustainable fashion, her commitment to creating ethical designs, and how her boutique could make a difference. There were moments when doubt crept in, moments when she wondered if she was wasting her time. But each time, she pushed through. When the email finally came, Clara's hands trembled as she clicked it open. "Congratulations! You've been awarded the Women's Entrepreneurial Grant." Tears streamed down her face as she read the words. For the first time since the bank meeting, she felt hope again. Winning the grant was a victory, but for Clara, it was just the beginning. The money gave her the means to start, but now she had to make it all happen. Her first decision was to launch her boutique online. A physical store would have been a dream come true, but with limited funds, she knew she had to be practical. The internet would be her storefront, and her tiny apartment would be her workshop. The next few weeks turned her life upside down. The transformation began slowly but soon took over her entire living space. Clara's once cozy living room became her sewing studio, with fabric draped over chairs and spools of thread stacked in corners. Her dining table turned into a packaging station, littered with boxes, tissue paper, and rolls of twine. Her workspace was chaotic, but Clara didn't mind. Each mess, each cluttered surface, felt like progress. She spent her days sewing her first collection, a small but heartfelt line of dresses, blouses, and skirts. Each piece was a labor of love, crafted with care from the sustainable fabrics she had spent months sourcing. At night, she worked on her website. Clara had no background in web design, so she turned to the internet for help. She watched tutorials, clicked through templates, and taught herself the basics. At first, the process felt impossible. Every time she thought she had the perfect layout, something went wrong. Buttons didn't work, images wouldn't load, and the fonts looked like something out of a bad PowerPoint presentation. "Why is this so hard?" she muttered to herself one evening, glaring at her laptop. But Clara wasn't one to give up. Slowly, she pieced it together. The final product wasn't flashy, but it was clean, simple, and true to her brand. On the homepage, she added a line that summed up her mission: timeless fashion, sustainably made. She stared at the screen, a small smile forming. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. To market her designs, Clara needed photos. But hiring a professional photographer wasn't in her budget, so she decided to do it herself. Her best friend, Mia, agreed to model. The photoshoot took place in Clara's apartment, with bedsheets pinned to the wall as a makeshift backdrop. Clara used her phone camera, balancing lamps on chairs to create lighting. The scene was more comedy than glamour. At one point, a lamp tipped over, narrowly missing Mia. "Okay, I officially demand hazard pay," Mia joked, laughing as she fixed the sheet that had fallen off the wall. Despite the chaos, the photos turned out beautifully. Clara edited them late into the night, adjusting colors and cropping out the clutter in the background. When she uploaded them to her website, she felt a surge of pride. 3 weeks after winning the grant, Clara's boutique was officially live. She sent an announcement to friends and family, posted on social media, and waited. For the first few days, nothing happened. Clara refreshed her websites obsessively, watching as a handful of people visited but didn't buy. The silence was deafening. One evening, as she sat on her couch scrolling through Instagram, doubt crept in. What if this doesn't work? What if no one cares? She was on the verge of closing her laptop when her phone buzzed. It was an order. Clara stared at the notification, her heart pounding. A stranger had bought one of her dresses. Her hands trembled as she processed the order. Then, the disbelief turned to joy. She stood up, laughing and crying at the same time, and did a little dance around her living room. That first order felt monumental, and Clara treated it with the care it deserved. She carefully folded the dress, wrapped it in tissue paper, and tied it with twine. She slipped a handwritten thank you note into the package, her handwriting neat and deliberate. As she sealed the box, she imagined the customer opening it, running their fingers over the fabric, and feeling beautiful in the dress she had made. For the first time in weeks, Clara felt a sense of calm. Her dream wasn't just alive, it was real. With her first sale in the books, Clara felt a newfound confidence in her vision. But success, she quickly realized, wasn't just about making products, it was about telling a story. Her boutique wasn't just another shop selling clothes. It was a symbol of sustainable fashion, of timeless style created with care for the planet. If she wanted people to connect with her brand, they needed to connect with her first. This realization marked the beginning of a new chapter for Clara, building her brand, one story at a time. One evening, as Clara scrolled through Instagram, she noticed something. The accounts she admired most weren't just showcasing polished products, they were sharing their behind-the-scenes moments, their struggles, their successes. It clicked. People didn't want perfection. They wanted connection. Clara decided to let people into her world. She posted a photo of her messy workspace, the dining table covered in fabric scraps, her sewing machine in the corner, and a half-finished dress draped over a chair. In the caption, she wrote, "This is what it looks like behind the scenes of my small sustainable fashion boutique. It's chaotic, it's messy, and it's my dream come true. Every piece I create is a labor of love, designed with the planet in mind. Thank you for being part of this journey with me." She hesitated before hitting post. Would anyone care? Would they judge her for not having it all together? But the next morning, Clara woke up to a flood of notifications. Her post had resonated with people in a way she hadn't expected. Comments poured in. "Love seeing the real side of your business. This is so inspiring, keep going. Your work is beautiful, and your passion shines through." For the first time, Clara realized the power of vulnerability. Clara's online presence grew slowly but steadily. Orders trickled in, and she began to recognize familiar names from Instagram in her customer list. One day, as she sifted through her emails, a message caught her eye. It was from a sustainable fashion influencer with thousands of followers. "Hi Clara, I love your designs. I'd love to feature your boutique on my page. Let me know if I can showcase a few pieces." Clara read the email 3 times, her heart racing. She quickly typed out a response, thanking the influencer and offering to send a few items. The next week was a whirlwind. Clara carefully chose 3 of her favorite pieces, packaged them with extra care, and shipped them off. Then came the waiting game. When the influencer's post went live, everything changed. Her phone buzzed with notifications, orders pouring in faster than she could process them. Her Instagram following doubled overnight, and her website traffic skyrocketed. Clara barely slept that week, spending her days sewing and her nights packaging orders. Her apartment was a mess, with boxes stacked in every corner and rolls of tape scattered across the floor. But amidst the chaos, Clara felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Her boutique was no longer just an idea. It was a movement. As the buzz around her boutique grew, so did Clara's doubts. She scrolled through the websites of bigger brands, their sleek marketing campaigns and professional photos making her feel small in comparison. Am I good enough? She wondered. Do I even belong in this space? One evening, overwhelmed by self-doubt, Clara called her best friend, Mia. "I feel like I'm faking it," Clara admitted, her voice shaky. "Like I'm just pretending to be a businesswoman while everyone else has it all figured out." "Clara," Mia said firmly, "you're not faking anything. You've built this from the ground up. Do you know how incredible that is? You're doing the real work, and people love what you're creating. Own it." Clara let Mia's words sink in. She realized that her authenticity, her willingness to be vulnerable, was what made a boutique special. Clara began focusing on building a community around her brand. She encouraged her customers to share photos of themselves wearing her designs, using the hashtag Clara's Closet. Each time someone tagged her in a post, Clara felt a surge of pride. Her designs weren't just sitting in boxes, they were being worn, loved, and celebrated. One message stood out. It was from a woman named Elena, who wrote, "Thank you for creating clothes that make me feel beautiful and aligned with my values. Your story inspires me to follow my own dreams." Clara read the message twice, tears welling up in her eyes. She realized that a boutique wasn't just about selling clothes, it was about creating something meaningful, something that connected people to a greater purpose. Clara's growing community caught the attention of a local eco-friendly brand. They reached out, proposing a collaboration to create a limited edition line of accessories to complement her designs. For Clara, this was a new challenge, but she embraced it with open arms. She worked closely with the brand to design pieces that reflected her style and values. When the collection launched, it sold out in days. This collaboration marked another turning point in Clara's journey. It wasn't just about what she could create, it was about the partnerships, the relationships, and the shared vision that made her boutique thrive. The success of Clara's boutique was gaining momentum. Each sale, each post, and each collaboration pushed her closer to her dream of making a meaningful impact in the world of sustainable fashion. She was no longer just a small business owner, she was building a brand that people cared about. Then, one morning, an email arrived that would change everything. Clara had just sat down with her morning coffee when her phone buzzed. She absent-mindedly opened her inbox, expecting the usual stream of customer inquiries and promotional emails. But one subject line caught her eye: partnership opportunity with Bloom Retailers. Her heart skipped a beat. Bloom was a major retailer known for supporting eco-conscious brands. They were a household name, with stores in cities across the country. Clara couldn't believe they were reaching out to her. She opened the email and read it slowly, savoring each word. "We've been following your boutique and love your commitment to sustainability. We'd like to discuss a potential collaboration to carry your designs in our stores. Let us know if you're interested." Clara sat frozen, her coffee forgotten. Her mind raced with excitement and fear. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, but it was also intimidating. Could she handle the scale? Would she be able to deliver? She took a deep breath and typed out a response. "Thank you so much for your interest. I'd love to discuss this further. Please let me know a time that works for you." The next week was a blur of preparation. Clara spent hours perfecting her pitch, updating her portfolio, and researching Bloom's history. She rehearsed in front of Mia, who played the role of a skeptical investor. "So why should we choose you?" Mia asked, crossing her arms in mock seriousness. "Because my designs aren't just clothes, they're a statement," Clara replied, her voice steady. "They represent a shift toward ethical, sustainable fashion, and people are ready for that shift." Mia grinned. "You've got this." But despite her preparation, Clara couldn't shake the nerves. The night before the meeting, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. "What if they think I'm too small?" she wondered. "What if I mess this up?" She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "You've made it this far," she whispered to herself. "You can do this." The day of the meeting, Clara walked into Bloom's headquarters with her portfolio in hand. The office was sleek and modern, its walls adorned with photos of their best-selling products. She was led into a conference room where 3 representatives from the company sat waiting. They introduced themselves warmly, but Clara could feel the weight of their expectations. She began her presentation, her voice trembling slightly at first. But as she spoke about her journey, about the rejection that had fueled her determination, the community she had built, and her unwavering commitment to sustainability, her confidence grew. She showed them her designs, explaining the thought and care that went into each piece. She spoke about her customers, the stories they shared, and how her boutique wasn't just a brand, it was a movement. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Clara's heart pounded as she waited for their response. Finally, one of the representatives smiled. "We love your vision," she said. "And we'd be honored to work with you." Clara felt a wave of relief and disbelief wash over her. She had done it. The collaboration with Bloom was a game changer. Clara's designs were featured in their stores, giving her boutique national exposure. But with growth came new challenges. Clara had to scale her production, hire a team, and navigate the complexities of working with a major retailer. Her once chaotic apartment was no longer enough to sustain her business. She rented a small studio space, a milestone that felt both exciting and daunting. The workload was intense, and there were moments when Clara felt overwhelmed. But each time doubt crept in, she reminded herself of how far she'd come. One evening, after a long day of meetings and sewing, Clara sat alone in her new studio. The walls were lined with the racks of her designs, each one representing months of hard work. She thought back to the day at the bank, to the loan officer's dismissive words, "It's not feasible." Clara smiled to herself. If only he could see her now. The collaboration with Bloom was everything Clara had dreamed of and more. Her boutique was no longer just a small online shop, it was a nationally recognized brand, with her designs displayed in major cities across the country. But as exciting as the partnership was, it came with challenges Clara hadn't anticipated. Growing pains were inevitable, and Clara quickly realized that scaling her business meant letting go of some control. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. For months, Clara had run the boutique by herself. Every stitch, every package, every email, it had all been her. But now, with Bloom's partnership generating more demand than she could handle, she needed help. Hiring her first employee was a surreal experience. She interviewed candidates in her tiny studio, trying her best to project confidence even though she felt like an imposter. "Tell me about a time you had to solve a problem under pressure," Clara asked one applicant, attempting to sound professional. The young woman, a recent design school graduate named Tasha, smiled nervously. "I once stayed up all night fixing a botched seam on a runway piece," she said. "I was terrified, but I finished it just in time. And it turned out to be the designer's favorite look of the show." Clara nodded, impressed. She saw something of herself in Tasha, determined, resourceful, and willing to push through fear to achieve her goals. When Clara offered her the position, Tasha's eyes lit up. "I won't let you down," she said. Over the next few weeks, Clara brought on more team members, a seamstress to help with production, a part-time assistant to manage emails and orders, and a marketing consultant to help her navigate her growing online presence. Letting go of control wasn't easy. Clara had spent so long doing everything herself that trusting others felt unnatural at first. But as she watched her team work together, bringing her vision to life in ways she couldn't have done alone, she realized something important: success wasn't a solo journey. With growth came logistical headaches. Sourcing sustainable fabrics on a larger scale was far more complicated than Clara had anticipated. One supplier ran out of a key material halfway through production, forcing Clara to scramble for alternatives. Another sent a shipment that arrived late, putting her entire timeline in jeopardy. Clara spent sleepless nights on the phone with suppliers, negotiating rush orders and expedited shipping. She kept a brave face for her team, but inside, the stress was overwhelming. During one particularly chaotic week, Tasha found Clara sitting in the corner of the studio, her head in her hands. "Everything feels like it's falling apart," Clara admitted, her voice shaky. Tasha knelt beside her. "You've built something incredible," she said gently. "And even when it feels like everything's going wrong, you always find a way to fix it. You're stronger than you think." Clara looked at Tasha, her heart swelling with gratitude. She wasn't alone in this anymore. As her boutique grew, Clara faced another challenge: staying true to her values. Bloom loved her designs, but their team occasionally suggested cost-cutting measures that didn't align with her commitment to sustainability. "Do we really need to use organic cotton for every piece?" one representative asked during a meeting. "Switching to cheaper material could increase your margins significantly." Clara felt her stomach twist. She understood the logic, but compromising her ethics wasn't an option. "I appreciate the suggestion," she replied carefully, "but sustainability is the heart of my brand. It's what my customers believe in, and it's what I believe in. Cutting corners isn't something I'm willing to do." The room fell silent for a moment before the representative nodded. "Fair enough, let's see how we can make it work." Clara walked out of the meeting with her head held high. She knew that staying true to her mission would make the journey harder, but it was a challenge she was willing to face. As Clara's boutique gained recognition, competitors began to take notice. Some were inspired by her success, others saw her as a threat. One day, Clara discovered that a larger brand had launched a new line strikingly similar to her designs. The colors, the silhouettes, even the marketing slogans, it all felt like a watered-down version of her boutique. Anger and frustration bubbled up inside her. She wanted to fight back, to call them out publicly. But after taking a deep breath, she realized that her energy was better spent focusing on what made her boutique unique. "You can't control what others do," Mia told her over coffee. "But you can control how you respond. Just keep being you, that's what people love." Clara took Mia's advice to heart. Instead of dwelling on the competition, she doubled down on her authenticity. She shared more of her story, engaged with her community, and poured her passion into every new collection. One evening, as Clara walked through a Bloom store in her city, she spotted something that made her pause. There, on a beautifully arranged rack, were her designs. Dresses and blouses she had dreamed up in her tiny apartment now sat proudly in a national retailer, alongside some of the biggest names in fashion. A woman nearby picked up one of the pieces, admiring the fabric. Clara's heart swelled as she watched her customer smile and head to the checkout counter. She had built this. Clara stepped out of the store into the crisp evening air, the city buzzing around her. She thought back to the day at the bank, to the rejection that had once made her question everything. She smiled to herself. That no had been the beginning of everything. The years that followed Bloom's partnership saw Clara's boutique transform into a national brand. What had started as a dream in her tiny apartment was now a recognized name in sustainable fashion. Her designs were featured in major magazines, worn by influencers, and celebrated by customers who believed in her mission. But even as she stood at the peak of her success, Clara often found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. One evening, Clara sat in her office, a space far removed from the chaotic apartment workshop where she had started. The walls were adorned with framed sketches of her first designs and photos of her team. Her desk was cluttered with fabric samples and notebooks, but it felt like the kind of chaos she thrived in. She picked up a letter that had arrived earlier that day. It was from the bank. The same bank that had rejected her years ago was now reaching out to discuss a potential partnership. Clara stared at the letter, a mix of emotions swirling inside her. Part of her felt vindicated. She wanted to march into their office, hold up the letter, and say, "Look what you missed out on." But another part of her felt something deeper: gratitude. If it hadn't been for their rejection, she might never have found the strength to push forward, to fight for her dream, and to build something even greater. A week later, Clara walked into the bank, her heels clicking against the polished floors. The atmosphere was as sterile as she remembered, but this time, Clara felt different. She was led into a conference room, where a group of executives greeted her warmly. They praised her success, congratulating her on her achievements. "We'd love to work with you," one of them said. "Your brand aligns perfectly with our mission to support local businesses." Clara smiled politely, but inside, she couldn't help but think of the day she had sat across from a loan officer in this very building, her dreams dismissed with a single word: feasible. "I appreciate your offer," she replied, her voice steady and confident, "but I've built my business without traditional funding, and I plan to keep it that way. Thank you for your time." As she left the bank, Clara felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She didn't need their validation anymore. Clara's success wasn't just about her anymore, it was about the next generation of dreamers. She began mentoring young entrepreneurs, offering workshops and one-on-one guidance to women trying to start their own businesses. One of her mentees, a young woman named Sophia, reminded Clara of herself. Sophia had a vision for an eco-friendly skincare line but was struggling to find funding and confidence. During one of their meetings, Clara shared her story in detail: the rejection, the late nights, the doubts that had nearly consumed her. "The road is hard," Clara told her, "but every no you hear is just a step toward the right yes. Don't let anyone tell you your dream isn't worth pursuing." Sophia nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you," she said. "I needed to hear that." Watching Sophia take her first steps reminded Clara of her own journey. It was a reminder that her success wasn't just about building a business, it was about inspiring others to believe in themselves. On the 5-year anniversary of her boutique's launch, Clara hosted a celebration at her studio. The room was filled with her team, her family, and her closest friends. Mia raised a glass, smiling brightly. To Clara she said, "The woman who turned a no into an empire." The room erupted in cheers, and Clara felt a surge of emotion. She looked around at the people who had supported her, who had believed in her even when she doubted herself. "Thank you," Clara said, her voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't have done this without all of you. This boutique isn't just mine, it's ours." As the celebration wound down, Clara stepped outside for a moment of quiet. The city stretched out before her, its lights twinkling like stars. She thought about the rejection that had started it all, the struggles that had shaped her, and the moments of triumph that had carried her forward. Clara realized that every obstacle she had faced had taught her something important, rejection isn't the end, it's a redirection. Success isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. And dreams aren't built in a day, they're built one step at a time. Today, Clara's boutique is more than just a business, it's a symbol of resilience, creativity, and hope. Clara's journey is proof that setbacks can be the foundation for success. Her story reminds us that every no is an opportunity to grow, to adapt, and to push forward. What about you? Have you ever turned a no into a yes? Share your story, we'd love to hear it. And if Clara's journey inspired you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of resilience, determination, and triumph.